better be true. We're all good. We got a couple others coming in here. We'll let them come in and we'll go. He couldn't make it tonight. I think that, yeah, he said he could make it. All right, everybody, let's make ourselves a start. Welcome to you all. I think I know most of your faces. If I do not know your face, and you don't know mine, my name is Charlie. I'm the senior pastor here at Memorial, and I'm really glad tonight to welcome 3 of the 4 amazing humans who formed the Foar From Home team. Would you like to give them a welcome, please? So here's our format. Cameron, you don't know this because you just arrived. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to have about 30 minutes of just some Q&A back and forth, or as long as we need for that, and then you guys are going to take over. I'm going to go and sit down, and you've got a presentation for us, and you just want to feedback a little bit from your experience. How's that sound? Yeah? Good. All right. Make sure you talk into the microphone when you get going. Excellent. All right. So this is something that we very much want to do here at Memorial. Bill, you're for sure a long-time member here, and Paul, I know you have connection here. You've been back and forth a lot, joining in our digital service as well. I see your name popping in there. And as a church, as we found out about the whole campaign, we said from the get-go here, we want to support you guys. This is a great thing that you're doing. We want to get behind you and make sure that we support you the best we can. So I've got a few questions, okay, and I want to see if you'll just humor me a wee bit as we go through, okay? So the first thing is, like, it's a crazy idea, the idea of rowing the Atlantic, and I know that the Talisker Challenge is a set race, and you thought of that, but whose idea was it initially? Right? Who's the crazy person who said we could do this? No.
Yeah, so the way the story goes, Billy had a shirt. I have a brother-in-law who's a special forces guy out in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and he had known of some guys in Colorado that were running across the ocean. This is in 2018, and he sent me a shirt that said, "Any idiot can row a boat, but it takes a real idiot to row across the ocean." So I said, "Well, what's this all about?" He said, "These 4 idiots are rowing across the ocean." I said, "Hey, what's that all about?" And he said, "There's this team that rowed across the ocean." Now, I've heard of people swimming across the ocean, the channel, English Channel, things of that nature. I'm like, okay, cool. So you row, and there's a support boat next to you. You know, you shower in the States. Or you get back, and then when you're ready in the morning, you've been at the boat, you row a little more, and it's so right up. And he's like, "No, you get in the boat, all your food's with you, everything you need is with you, and you don't stop until you get to the other side." And I said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever done." And whoever does it is a bunch of idiots. True story, in church, I'm not lying. Little did I know that the steps would be taken like Billy just said. So fast forward, they raised money for Fight or Die. A gentleman by the name of Chris Coons comes to town. He was going to be, or was one of the rowers. I can't remember where it was at the time. He was one of the rowers. And he told us about his
it obviously caught up. Like everyone in this community knows about Foar From Home, right? So. Let me talk to you a little bit. Those are some of the beginnings, right? Let me talk to you a wee bit about the middle, and I'm counting the middle as in like from decision point to getting out on the water and going across that little ocean. Okay. So talk to me like training and preparation. What goes into how do you start? How do you keep going? Because I know you guys were at this for a couple of years before you got out to the Canary Islands to start this journey. So what's involved in physically preparing for such a challenge?
It's a long process. Well, none of us, to be honest with you, when we first got started this, none of us have ever rowed a boat. We've never even seen a set of oars. We basically kayakers, swimmers, runners, bikers, whatever we do, but none of us had ever rowed a boat. So we said we probably ought to hire a rowing coach. So we got a young man from Jacksonville University who became our rowing coach. In kind, Cameron was graduated of JU. So we got their rowing coach, and he basically taught us the basics of rowing. And if you ever go back to the videos of us on the little skinny skull boats, it's hilarious. We were tipping in the water, we were rolling. We couldn't even get on the boat. So that was the baby steps. And there's some requirements from Tallahassee that you have to do. There's 5 classes that you have to take. One is, first off, is ocean navigation. 2 is first aid at sea. 3 is sea survival. 4 is radio communications. And the 5th one is ocean rowing. These are requirements from the Atlantic campaign to make sure that just 4 knuckleheads aren't going out on the water. They're not knowing what they're doing. And they do a good job of testing to make sure. And you're required to have 120 hours on your boat. Time spent on your boat on the ocean. We surpassed that we went to about 350 hours on our boat. We're 4 older gentlemen. We weren't expecting to win, or we kind of figured 45 days, 55 days to get across, and that's what we trained for. But we had people all over the island that helped us. We had a cross-training coach. So we were up at 6 o'clock in the morning for 2 years, going CrossFit training. We each had our own regimen. We tried to go without drinking and eating right. That lasted about a month. but other than that, we just kind of stayed on it. The most important thing for us was time on the water, time on the boat, getting to know the boat, learning how to live. So we did a couple trial runs to St. Augustine, up to Savannah, and things like that on the ocean, just to get used to the seasickness and get used to just being and living on the boat. So that all led to a 3-year process.
That's grueling. That's grueling. For 2 years, and just committing to that, and I commend you for that. But I also know that takes some mental strength, and obviously there must have been some mental preparation to go into this to prepare yourself for that. So who wants to talk to me about preparing yourself mentally?
Yeah, one, we had a performance coach. She's entrenched in the community. Her name is Dawn Grant. She's a mental trainer and hypnotist. And we worked with her in the beginning. And then even all 4 of us were, you have 4 individuals, but you're one team. And we all had, and it's kind of the beautiful thing. It's just like the church community or beyond the church community. Everybody's got individual needs. And we all came to the mission with individual needs. And I'll expose one of mine. I was really worried about being claustrophobic. For some reason, over my 59 years of life, I developed towards the end, being in closed spaces. I was like, ooh. And then being in a closed space, visualizing 30, 40-foot seas, when you got to be in this little 4x4 square and lock the doors and you can't get out, you have to figure out how do you overcome that. And so what was really neat is to take what we learned with our mental training and preparation, but really to also communicate that to the community, that you can look at things differently. Don't look at them as, that this is a negative. It's how do I live with that? How do I take that now as a positive and learn to blend it into my life? And it's kind of the same lesson for folks that are struggling with depression and other ailments in life. It's like, how do you work with that? How do you not look at it as a disability, but, how do you turn it into an ability? And so you just train for that. You slowly put yourself into a situation. And I did. I would go to the boat, maybe when these guys weren't around, and I would just leave the door open. I would go in the cabin. I would not mentally think about working all the instruments in there. And as I'm learning about the instruments, the VHF radio, the GPS plotter, all of a sudden now I've realized I'm in this small space. And I was in this small space for about an hour and a half. So gradually, I just, progressed. And the biggest lesson I had was when Hupp and I were in the cabin and actually sleeping together. We did a row up towards St. Simon's. We were kind of all going in the onset stages of hypothermia because we all got sandals on and shorts, and it's 30 degrees at night, because we just, in Florida, right? We just really didn't prepare. But that was a stage of training. And so Hupp and I stood in the cabin together, and we learned, how are we going to sleep together if we're caught in high seas? How will we operate, together as a team if we're going to be in high seas? How are we going to make each other comfortable? How are we going to be there for each other?
Thank you. This is a question from my wife. I already had this written down, Margaret, by the way, whenever you brought it up, but I went home to Northern Ireland for a couple of weeks in October, November, and Margaret says the second week she started a little bit crazy about me. It was great news. What about your families? Like, how did they prepare for this and cope with 2 years preparation and then, 51 days on the ocean?
I'll go first. So I am married with 2 children. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter. My wife is also a veteran. She was in the Air Force as we met. So there was a little bit of understanding, and she actually said it, so I'm going to try to quote her instead of my words. She understands that this is a mission, just like any other mission that either one of us has ever had to go on, and you do what you have to do for the mission. So God bless her. I joke that she had to go out and play with boys for 51 days, but no, she was very much understanding, and she helped my oldest daughter, who's 18. She's that age, right? So she was cool with it too. I think towards the end it became a reality, and it was like, oh wow, we're really going to do this. She was a little. We had a couple of chats, a little more than ours, at being there. And then my 7-year-old, the ocean's only as big as the picture on the paper, so she didn't really do it. It was kind of cute, but yeah, they dealt with it well. My wife, who was at the time speaking, and I made sure that the receiver, if you know her, tell her that I said it.
Awesome. So you're supported, of course, by your family units, but your tagline throughout certainly the last year fundraising preparation was powered by community. It takes community to rule an ocean. Like, talk to me a little bit just about the strength of this island community that we're a part of, and what it meant to really try and harness that strength for you all.
I'll take that one because I'd like to really add on to Cam's piece, and Billy's wife, Katie, did the same thing along with Lou and my girlfriend, Ruth. If you look at the support system there, it was really an example of the way the church is. Everybody really has an understanding of what somebody else is doing and maybe going through, and using those life experiences to reach out. And Starla kind of formed a thing before we would go, and she actually even reached out to a lot of the rowers' wives and other halves that were on other teams, to build a network, just to kind of, to socialize maybe what feelings everybody's going through. And so we are trying to pay that forward now, too. We're meeting some of the wives and the other halves of the other row teams, and kind of relaying that information. But what Pastor Charlie's talking about, too, our slogan is, it takes an island across an ocean. We really, just along with the name and our brand and our logo, we really wanted to come up with something that we felt was just not a slogan, but that it was actually something that was living every day in our mission. And we knew that we could come up with the idea or the vision, but that it really was going to take an entire community to cross the Atlantic Ocean. One thing that the Fight or Die team told us, and then you hear it from a lot of the other road teams, it's pretty remarkable when you're a road team and you are sitting at the starting line, just the starting line. They would talk about not even yet rowing across the ocean. If you and your four mates and your boat and your mission and your community, if you're all sitting there ready to start the race, it's a huge, huge achievement. And we really could not have done it without the community. You have to remember, when we sat at the Florida House and we came up with this vision, you know, we separated from the bars and everything. We sat down and met as a group to really sincerely see if we can do this. You have to remember, we had 4 guys, we had a pad, we had a pen, and we had a dream. You know, but we knew that we would make this dream come true. And it was tough in the beginning. But we hung in, and we just started doing all little things. I remember even when Pastor Charlie was there picking raffle numbers, you know, out of our thing. But I think everybody really needs to know and understand, we were not really, other than Baptist Hospital, we really did not have any big corporate sponsors. We were driven by community.
You really were? I got that call. I tell people this all the time. I got that call in the middle of the pandemic. It must have been like April 2020 or May 2020. And I get this call to the office. Hey, Pastor Charlie, we're looking for someone to come and lead a prayer at this fundraiser for Foar From Home. And I'm like, Foar From Who? I get down there and I realize it's Bill, and I get introduced to everybody else. And that was it. It was like Facebook, and then I forgot about it for a while until I saw the momentum coming. All right, let's talk a little bit about the road. My 30 minutes disappeared quick, and I've got a couple of things I really want to get to. What's it like leaving the Canary Islands, those first 2 days? Describe just the start of it, whenever you realize, or start to realize, I imagine how lonely it is out there.
Exciting, super exciting, because all the teams that you know put in all that work, but it wasn't just us, it was 34 other teams that all took off together. So it was really exciting. The first day, because you leave in 15-minute increments. So it's like the first team goes and everybody cheers. Last time we were about this towards the end. I think we got the most cheers because we had a little fun that we'll talk about later in the presentation. But it's very surreal. At that point, you know it's real, but then it really gets real on day 1.5, 2, when you no longer can see the Canary Islands, and then it's like, oh. and that's what you see for the next 50 days is basically just open ocean and open water, and you don't. So I think that's when it really hits, and that's when the seasickness kind of starts a little bit. So you spend about 3 days being seasick and puking all over each other and getting past that, and then once that subsides, it just settles in, and then it's like, okay, we got a job to do. So let's just get across.
So I came out for an hour with you one day in your preparations. You remember that? And
do.
At that time you told me that your plan was 2 men rowing for 2 hours, 2 men off or doing maintenance. Like, did that keep going for your 51 days? 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Was that the rhythm?
Yeah, we stayed really true to 2 hours on, 2 hours off for a good bulk of the row. Around the 20-day mark, you think, or 15? Yeah, we kind of adjusted at night to right at 1 o'clock in the morning. We would row from 1 to 4, and the 2 would get about 3 hours of sleep. And then from 4 to 7, we did the same thing. Because what we kind of discovered at night was we didn't really have that many chores, any boat duties assigned to us, you know, making water. It was pretty much, you're done rowing, you could quickly strip your clothes, do your body maintenance, and almost get like 2 hours and a half, if you were lucky, you know, of some really good, solid, continuous sleep. And it really helped. I mean, we were still severely sleep deprived, but it really did help a little bit.
Yeah, if I could just add one quick thing. So the running joke throughout the entire process of the row, once it started, was nobody saw that in the brochure. That wasn't in the brochure. So there were a number of things we can speak on later, but the one that ties into this is there's no such thing as 2 hours off. There's, by the time somebody, even if I were to row this way and Billy were to jump in and pull back on the same stroke and we never missed a beat, by the time I would be done either doing whatever I needed to do to get ready, I mean, you look at your alarm, because I think every one of us already had a preset alarm for the entire row. I mean, you knew it was every 2 hours. So I think the most I ever got was an hour and like 32 minutes, like by the time I was done. Wow. One time it was 15 minutes, and it's amazing. You can fall asleep for 15 minutes. Yeah, so, but an hour and a half was pretty much I think the limit.
The one thing that was really funny, though, I know we're on time, but you can't miss the funny ones. So for me, I ended up getting the record of waking up the quickest. So it was like I went and crashed, and Cam, I love Cam because he's always got a sense of humor. Hupp was covering my back. I mean, I literally got up like in 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And I started like dressing, and Hupp noticed the light on, and Hupp was like, Paul, you still got like a lot of time left. You were only down for 10 minutes. Cam is like in the background. No, we're good. You get on yours.
Let him know if he wants out.
Keep going. And then Hupp had the one time, I think the most times, he just kept waking up, like every 10 minutes. So what ends up happening that we discovered is sometimes you'll just go so deep into a very quick sleep, and then a wave will come by, it'll jolt you, wake you up, and no matter what all your data is saying, you still have in your skull, I got to get out there, and I got to relieve the guys. So.
There's no sense of time. I mean, you lose all sense of time after so many, probably the first 3 days after that. I mean, I remember rowing, and again, I know I'm not trying to steal time here, but I remember, I always use this as an example. We'd start at like, just say 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 2:15, I'd be like, what time is it? And then Hupp always had his radio or his phone playing, and he'd be like, it's 2:15. And I'm like, what time did we start? And he'd look at me and he'd go, I don't know. And I'm like, well, are we done at 3 or are we done at 4? Or did we row, true story, did we row 15 minutes too long? Because you're just like, you are oblivious. And like, your body just goes into an automatic, and you're sitting there and you're pulling. And it's not every day, but at least half the days, at some point in your day, you have that moment where you're like, how long have we been doing this?
Wow. Yeah, someone explains like being on a horse, like a mechanical bull for 52 days. Yeah. It's the best way to explain it. And sleeping too. Try sleeping. Lay down and roll back and forth, smashing against the wall and trying to sleep for your 2 hours. You just kind of get used to it.
Wow. So that's a seamless transition. Tell me about the impact on your bodies and your minds of this whole experience.
Go ahead.
Sure.
So for me, I started out the row when I left Amelia Island and landed in La Gomera, met with the doctor. I weighed in at 205 pounds. When I started CrossFit training, I was around 222, 225. When I ended the row and landed in Antigua, I ended up at 161 pounds. I haven't seen that weight since junior high school. It was kind of a weird feeling. I do remember, though, like Billy and Cam in particular, I remember like sometimes he would just look at me and I'm like, dude, what are you looking at? And it's like,
I'm trying to figure it out.
Trying to figure it out, man. It's like you got some alien thing going on, And you morphed physically into, a different person. But I think what I'd really like to relate to you is the inspirational and the spiritual piece of the row, grounded in a completion of a mission, that was so successful that not one individual could ever do. We never discount how many people it took to put this together. I really do want you all to know that. But you can't go through this journey and be out in that ocean at night and not realize, that there's a God out there, that there's this just creator of something just so magnificent. For me, one of the neatest times were when the stars were at its brightest, the moon was at its brightest, not a cloud, not an obstruction in the sky. And you can actually see the curve of the earth. I've heard so much about that, but you can actually see on the horizon, the curve. And the Milky Way, the stars, the marine life that we saw, was just spectacular. And I really wish somehow we could have captured it with a drone, that came in on us and then moved back and came back, because, you just see really, where you sit in this entire scheme of everything. But it was very, very inspirational. And then the mission was the most, inspirational, because really you got 4 guys that started out. We just wanted to sponsor a couple of dogs, because we knew how successful the dogs were, and now we've ended along with the community and where we've actually built a kennel that will train 64 dogs a year. It's pretty spectacular.
So I was passing by Pastor Carey's office today, and I was like, Carey, if you've got any questions for these guys, let me know. And she's like, what question are you going to ask? And the last question I was about to ask was this. The heavens declare the glory of God, and you spent 50 days on the water with nothing but water and sky around you. And I was going to ask, do the heavens declare the glory of God? But you answered that question already, Paul. So thanks for taking that one from me, because we're right on 6:30. And I know that you have a lot to share. We want to hear about your cause. We want to hear, and you've got a presentation to take us through. But thank you just for giving us 30 minutes of Q&A here tonight. And I'm going to hand over to you guys now to take us through your own presentation, and then I'll come back up at the end, okay? Thank you.
Sounds good. Phil, before we go on, did you want to touch on the spiritual piece?
No, you kind of hit it,
okay.
Actually. I mean, you speak to God quite a bit when you're in the middle of the ocean. You're closer to Him than anywhere else, I think.
Yeah, it was beautiful. We had, before we get to the slideshow, Billy had a lot of scripture out there. A lot of times we would read. We did 4 burials at sea. We took that time. That's why, a lot of folks, when they were looking at our journey across the ocean, it was our journey. It was our community's journey. We felt no need, or we were never compelled to get into a race. Life is not about a race. There's enough racing going on for people to be number one and everything. And one thing about veteran suicide that we want to make sure, we pass along is, we think what happens from this journey that we've kind of learned is there's a lot of expectations placed on folks, and particularly our veterans. They find themselves, whether it's, one tour, multiple tours, or a career, they get a lot of responsibility, and then when they get out, there's always like a hard, sometimes, transition. And then we place extra expectations with family pressure and so forth. So for our journey, we really never placed any expectations on ourselves. And I will tell you, I give these 3 guys, Hupp is not here tonight. If he didn't have a prior commitment, he would be here. But I think what's really important, these 3 guys put themselves out in front of a community, and we trained, we did things that we failed, right in front of the community. Times we tried to get out of the inlet, even though we were trying to get out of the inlet, with 25 knot winds and 8-foot seas. We still, if we didn't make it, we were never embarrassed. We never quit, and we never felt like, a failure was a bad thing. So really wanted to kind of keep winding that into this briefing, because that's really what we're all about. If we, Cam eloquently always captures this. If you never remember our name or the 4 guys, we just don't want you ever to forget you, your family, your grandchildren, your sons, daughters, really about the problem of veteran suicide, in our country. But we don't want you to forget also, really, can help really in a simple way. doesn't take, sometimes a lot. And I think we really, really kind of proved that. But if we can go to the first slide. So I'll start this off, and then we'll go to the next slide and let Cam and Billy take the other ones. But this slide here, with this picture, actually means a lot to us because Billy mentioned we had a pretty significant event happen to us in La Gomera. So folks always ask, like, hey, were you guys ever nervous? Were you ever, like, what did you fear? What made you nervous? For all of us, it was something different. For me, I will tell you, I was, like, really the big part of the project management of this whole thing, buying the boat, shipping the boat, and so forth. This picture here was taken when we were really only had 2 days to pack the boat. We had a huge scare, and it wasn't just us, but it was 2 other U.S. teams. We all shipped through the same company. They all went out the same time. We all even shipped the boats really early. They sat in Savannah. We got an email that said, hey, your container's there. It's not going to probably go for another 6 weeks. It's sitting with 80,000 other containers, if everybody remembers the chain supply problem. But actually, in reality, the boat ended up getting there 1 day prior to us getting to Tenerife, to the Canary Islands. But it ended up getting stuck in customs. And we really had, about 2 days?
Yeah, 2 days.
Maybe to get it. So this one picture right here always reminds me of that, because it was a time where we really didn't have the boat. And then when we got the boat, the Talisker campaign photographer took a picture of it and then really kind of superimposed it with us, because they all knew that we were there for almost 10 days while all the other boats were prepping and getting ready, that we had no boat. So that's kind of what that picture reminds us of. So next slide. Cam, you want to talk about this? Handsome guys.
So that's definitely the before picture. I don't know how many of you have seen the after, but I'm sure it'll be coming up here soon, and there's a drastic difference. But yeah, so this is early on. We were tasked along with 2 other teams, or
yes,
3, 2 other teams. We were the only American team that was tasked. We were chosen to be ambassadors for the sea. And Paul actually does a much better version of telling this, and I usually don't pay attention to him when he talks, so.
I'm used to that.
No, so what they do is this year, Talisker paired with Parlay, excuse me, yeah. I'm popping my peas in the microphone here. Parlay, who this particular year they were advocating for just world knowledge of restoring the ocean forest, as they refer to it. All of the kelp, the green life that as it grows, whatever shape or form that takes, but basically replenishing at what they call the ocean forest. And we were honored with the being elected as one of the teams to take that message and basically, in a nutshell, saying that, ocean is life. God created the ocean, and we shouldn't be throwing our garbage in it. We shouldn't be doing anything to destroy it or the life that exists in it. And some of the things that we as a species are doing as a human race, are pretty deplorable in certain areas of the world. And so we didn't want to take away, as Paul always says, from our message, because we were always focused on the veteran suicide. But if part of our message is using the water to help aid veterans and do basically like aqua therapy, as I call it, if we don't have the oceans, then that type of therapy would come to an abrupt halt. So that was my moment with this parlay, was that we need the water, not only for survival, but for the therapy that we are promoting with other veterans. And without it, we lose a lot of our mission. So,
yeah, just to end on that, we can go to the next slide. and Billy will take this one in a second, but just to conclude on that, that was actually, we were really blessed with a paid sponsorship from that. It was really completely separate. Talisker and Parlay actually paid us to be sea ambassadors for that. So since we did not need that money, what we are doing with that money is we are going to carve it out and give it to 3 veteran groups that specifically use the ocean for mindfulness. We've got one group that actually goes out, they're divers, they replenish coral beds, and then we have one local group here. Actually, we're going to have 2 local groups. One uses the outdoor with fishing. We're going to go ahead and donate to them. And then there's another group down in Jacksonville who does a lot of surfing and a lot of canoeing. They actively meet 3 days a week. And the veterans specifically use the ocean for their mindfulness. So Billy will take you. He kind of already captured for you. So this one, it'll be just kind of an add-on. But, you know, everybody looks at our journey at 51 days, and it's not. So take that over, Billy.
Sure. That's. I mean, yeah. You heard how we all started, and that was back in October. Well, actually, June of 2019 is when we actually the idea came up. But anyhow, so from June 2019 to it's actually still going on because we're here. So, but that's been the journey of Foar From Home. It's been a long time, and this slide here just highlights who we raised money for in our cause. Our cause was very near and dear to us. All 4 of us are veterans. If you haven't figured that one out, Paul was a Marine Corps veteran. I was an Army veteran. Cam was an Air Force veteran, and Hupp was a Navy chief who served a full career in the Navy, retiring on a submarine as a chief. So our cause was very near and dear to us. So we chose 2 organizations to donate to. One, Cross the Line, which is a local nonprofit here that actually it's kind of where Paul and I actually run Cross the Line Foundation, the Cross the Line Foundation, and they work with veterans locally, and we do events for veterans and raise money and pick a different charity every year with Cross the Line and raise money for them. And we also do 4 scholarships in the community for students in Nassau County that are family members of veterans or going into the ROTC program or going into the military. So money went to an endowment for that, and then for K9 for Warriors, which we also talked about, where we're going to sponsor. Our goal was to sponsor a couple dogs, and we ended up getting enough money to purchase a kennel. So we could probably go to the next slide. I think we covered that one too.
Yeah. This one slide here, we kind of covered a little bit in the beginning when we talked about we did over 300 hours of training and so forth, and all our safety courses. So we'll go to the next slide. Good, Cam, take that one. When we first got the boat.
Yeah, so we got to take a trip down to Jacksonville, the port, and we got to see our unveiling personally when they opened the back of the truck. And the top picture is the day that we rolled it out of the truck and down the ramp from the warehouse and into the parking lot to hook it up to come back to the island here. So all 4 of us jumped up in there to commemorate the moment, and that's what you're seeing in the first picture at the top there. The next picture was when it got its first set of, I call it skin, its stickers. We were rowing all the time, and something we had noticed with a lot of the other teams was we'd be rowing by and nobody knew what they were looking at. So then we had the bright idea, maybe we should put our website and our name on the side of the boat. So if you look in the picture in the middle, it says Foar From Home. So that's the first step. And then by that time, we went ahead and put the Baptist Medical, and I know I'm forgetting what the other 2 were in the back there. But we
got Biz Help.
There you go. And so the 3 of our sponsors at the time, along with, you can't see it, but on the back we have a K9s for Warriors and Cross the Line sticker as well. And then the final evolution is the last picture where you see it with the eagle and the stars and the stripes, and it's race ready, actually in Spain, taken probably moments just before it went in the water.
Yeah, what's really neat about this slide, and then we'll go to the next one, is, just like United Methodist Church, right? At some time it started, and it didn't look like it does today, right? And that's what's so neat and transformative about this slide, is if you look at the boat Courageous, it had its stages, through its life, just like we had our stages. And again, it's just like veteran suicide. Somebody will have, a moment in their life, but with work and community and everybody coming together, again, somebody or something can really transform. So, next slide, please.
Real quick, can we go, I'm sorry, I jumped all over it. Can we go back one? Thank you. So a lot of questions we ask. So if you haven't had a chance to actually see the boat, this would probably be a perfect time. So where we're standing on top there, if you see like that little black square just below the flag, that's one of the sleeping quarters. That's actually holds the radio and the nav system as well. So all of our electronics were in that, and that's where Paul and Hupp slept and took their shift turns out of. On the far side, to the right, or in the center picture, the long nose piece that you see there, that's where Billy and I camped out of throughout. And the entire boat's 28 feet long. So you can see that if you cut off the nose and the back end where the sleeping quarters are, you maybe have 12 feet, 15 feet max that you're rowing in, and you have to maneuver around those that are rowing. And that's all day, every day on the water. And one of the things that I found interesting is when we would take people out to row with us around the island here, just people that had volunteered and people that wanted to just kind of get a closer look. I always found it interesting that the first thing they would do is step on the boat and almost keel over. Because this thing, it rocks like a rocking horse. And as soon as you step on it, I mean, it's made to move with the water. So when it gets hit underneath with a wave, it just reacts to it. So it also reacts to anything that happens on top of it. So you got 4 belugas like us walking around and half awake because we're mostly zombies, halfway through the trip. And I think the real accomplishment was that none of us ended up in the water. So, yeah, but it was pretty tight quarters. So I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Next, thanks.
This is when our prayer came in handy. Trust me. This is the 2 days prior to the start of the race when most of the teams had gotten their boats and were already in the water, already prepped, already checked, ready to go. Our boat had still not arrived, and our boat arrived 2 days before. And trust me, we got to see La Gomera up close and personal because we were there walking around for like 12 days, just waiting. And there was a little church in the middle of the downtown area of La Gomera, so I paid a lot of time at that church actually praying that our boat would get there on time and get there and arrive, and it did.
We all did.
But we had 2 days to get ready, and that was unpack everything that we had thrown in the boat prior to shipping, which we thought we'd have 12 days, and then repacking it, getting it inspected, repacking it, getting it weighted out, doing a test run on the boat, and literally we got that done probably 9 o'clock the night before we were supposed to take off. So
yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, a lot is attributed to Paul. I'll give him that. Is he kept us all calm when a lot of us were about ready to choke somebody or whatever. But yeah, he's like kept reassuring us that everything was going to be okay. It'll get here. Yeah. It'll get here. Don't worry, we'll get there. And by God, it did. 2 days before, but just enough time.
Yeah.
So that's us packing out.
Yeah.
Those are pictures of us.
In the pictures there, I just always like the one in the upper right-hand corner. So if you see all those little blue and white packages, each one of those is an individual day, and each one of those is just mine. That entire pile was my food and each one of us had a pile just like that. We ended up leaving with close to 1,000 pounds of just dehydrated food. And so we each had to take in close to 6,000 calories a day. So, and that's just, and then you see the rope that we have for our anchors, and then we had life suits that in case we ever had to go overboard and abandon ship, and all of that had to be strategically placed on the boat so that we could still exist as well.
Yeah, what's real key too, like Billy mentioned in this picture, and I'll go back and give Cam and Billy and Hupp, a lot of credit. It's always a team. Billy, a lot of times we were roommates, and for me, when you're coming and saying kept us calm and all that, it's also reassuring for me that I've got mates, and I like relaying this story because we always want to come out to the community and give a message that goes with our mission about reshaping, staying the course, keeping your expectations level. But, when you get somebody like Billy or Cam or Hupp, and behind the scenes they're telling you, hey, you know what, Paul? When the boat gets here, I got this, and we're going. Just give it to me. So it's kind of like an analogy of a wide receiver or a running back saying, hey, you know what? When you're coming out of the huddle and we're getting ready to break, give me the ball and I'm going to punch it in the end zone. It was really reassuring to know that your community had a team of 4 guys that we really worked with what we had, not what we didn't have, in order to be successful. We even had the notion there that really whenever that boat got there, as long as Cam could make it back to work, that, because he had to get back to a job, that boat, we were going to pack it, we were going to lay it in the water, and we were going across the ocean, regardless. So, next slide, please. Yeah, this is a quick one. This photo Hupp took, Billy was talking about being done at night. This was pretty much the way the boatyard looked in the marina, because we didn't have the opportunity actually to be in the boatyard because our boat wasn't there. We got the opportunity, though, to be lined up with all the other boats. We did get in the water at that time. So Lagomera was really beautiful, but it was what a sight to see every individual boat lined up with the rest of the fleet. Here, I'll take the opportunity as a church and as a community. If you all have the opportunity this year, this race goes on every year. Our fleet was made up of 37 other boats from all around the world. There were 11 different countries that were represented. But what's really unique is that every one of those boats had a purpose. They weren't just going out there to race or, an ego to run across an ocean. Everybody had a cause. And I would charge you in a mission, take some time to go back and look at even this year's race, just to find out what people are rowing for. And you'll find yourself just in a journey learning about, everybody all over the world, facing a lot of the common problems as us as a community. We're facing veteran suicide, mindfulness, mental awareness, Alzheimer's, breast cancer, human trafficking, homelessness. It's amazing the amount of boats. And this year there's going to be 50, I believe, that I counted last in the fleet. So it's a world community. It's like one of the biggest world fundraisers that are out there. So please take some time to look at it. Next slide. Get it, Cam or Billy.
Sure. That's our route across the ocean. We left on December 12th. Not exactly that red line. The red line is the most direct route. Yeah, the red line is the most direct route. But most people, it's actually take the path that Christopher Columbus took coming across the ocean. So you go south towards Cape Verde, yeah, and then you cut across to Antigua. So it estimates about 3,000 miles. 3,000 miles across, 2,865 nautical miles, 3,000 miles. For us, we went backwards a little bit, so we did a little extra. When we were on the pair anchor for a day, we actually lost about 16, 20 miles and had to make that up. But that's just basically the route across that they take with the challenge.
So folks, for sponsoring a mile, that group got double.
Yeah.
So they got their money's worth.
Mile
on that one.
2,100 again. Yeah.
Next slide.
So this one I'll take.
Yeah, go for it.
So this particular day, we had been a couple of weeks in, and we get a message on the radio that Talisker boat is coming our way. And this is about the only time you will see them. It was the only time we see them, other than if you call for an emergency. And they come by, they chat you up, they make sure everybody's, in somewhat good spirits. And then they ask you to smile and wave for their pictures so that they have it for their brochure next year. And, you really, at that moment, realize how happy you are just to see anybody, other than the other three guys you rowed. No, but it was really cool because one of the gentlemen, actually two of the gentlemen that were on this particular boat had rowed the year before, and they represented Antigua, where we were heading to. So I know I'm not sure if we all did, but I know I had a point. I made a point to talk to one of the gentlemen that was on that boat, and they got to shout across to us, and I had spoken to him before this moment, and he kind of told me how it was for him and how he fished, and I had seen some of his journey from the year before. But then while they're there, they just jump in the water. They grab a snorkel and a mask and a camera, and they're not tied off to anything, and they disappear, and they're underwater, and they're like, yeah, just keep rowing, don't worry, we're going to video you. And we're like, what? And they stay underwater, and we're like, where did this guy go? And then another guy jumps in, and that boat takes off, and they start filming you from a distance. But it's really cool. They really make sure that you're doing, you're in good spirits. They make sure that everybody's still in somewhat right mind. And they send messages to other rowers, which was really cool because we received some messages from them firsthand from other rowboats that were just wondering how we were doing and wanted us to know that they were thinking of us. And that was a real feel-good moment. And that really, I think, me personally lifted me up because it was, we ended up being the Cinderella team of the, because of the hardship, along with the other two American teams. We really, we garnered a lot of attention just based on the fact that other teams realize what you've had to go through for 3 years because they've done it as well. And to see a team possibly not be able to row because of a paper error, they felt for us, and that was genuine. I think we all felt that, and when the boat came, everybody came up to us and like, listen, what do you need? I don't know if we touched on that earlier, but that was a genuine feeling because not very many people do this. I don't know why, but not a lot of people do this event. There's all sorts of statistics out there. More people will climb Everest this year than have ever crossed the ocean in a rowboat. More people have been to outer space. It was really cool. And then an interesting fact about that last picture at the bottom, Hupp took that through his binoculars. He held the camera up to his binocular lens when the boat was really far out, and he took that picture. And they ended up using it in one of their daily podcasts or something. Yeah. Yep. So, but it was they do a lot. I can't say enough about Talisker because they all understand that each one of us has a personal reason for doing this, and they do everything to make sure that that's really successful. So,
that was taken New Year's Day, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. What's really neat, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, the way I'm looking at, you all too. When we're standing up, if you can really visualize when you're looking at that photo, we really, for 51 days, woke up with that same view. I mean, it was beautiful. Don't let me ever steer you any other way. It was spectacular. But really, mentally, try to think of yourself to wake up and you just never see land, for 51 days. A really other neat stat is when we were halfway across the course, unless there was a cargo ship that was near, the closest human to us, because we were 1,500 miles away from each shore, would have been in the space station 90 miles above. So that's the closest human, other than a cargo ship if they were passing by. But there was a point where we were outside of the cargo lanes. The north-south route off of Africa, we were gone from that. Once we got away from Cape Verde, about 200-300 miles northwest of Cape Verde, we were pretty much out of the shipping lanes. We're kind of in the middle. You had shipping lanes north and south, and then we started picking up the shipping lanes again when we were closer to Antigua. Next slide.
Yeah, one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how many boats do you see, how often? Other than container ships, and we saw the Queen Mary too? Yeah, Queen Mary too, and things of that. You never see another row team after the first day until you land, and if they're there to greet you. You don't see any of them on the water.
Get to hold full conversations with cargo ship captains, right? They're like trying to get you off the air. Yeah. It's like, look, I haven't talked to anybody except for these three knuckleheads in 10 days. Need to talk to somebody. I think Paul had like a 2-hour conversation with some Filipino guy.
Yeah. Billy was like, wow, I feel like he's got your credit card, and the whole crew is spending here, is charging away. But the funny part about the cargo, if you want another giggle, what we loved is every time you reach out to a cargo ship, you would say cargo ship Desert Princess, cargo ship Desert Princess, this is rowboat courageous. And we loved this because it was consistent all the way through the journey. The first thing we always heard was did you say a rowboat? Oh, that was always good for a chuckle. Yeah. Cam or Billy, you want to take them through any of these photos here?
I think this is just day to day. You can see the spectacular. Life. Yeah, you can see the spectacular sunrise or sunset on the right. The one on the left is Paul. Paul is our in the water bug. We all know how much he likes to get in the water, and avid surfer and everything. So anytime the boat needed cleaned, he would like jump at it and be the one to go in the water and clean the bottom of the boat, which was probably about once a week where you had to get in and scrape the barnacles off the bottom of the boat. And you're attached to a little tether. I think we have the tether line down front. So everybody's attached to the boat. You're attached to the boat at all times. And even when you're in the water, you're attached with a longer tether. So, but anyhow, that's just day to day on the boat. You can kind of see the transformation with the beards and things like that. And but that's pretty much it. On the lower right is a school of tuna, a school of yellowfin tuna that followed us for like 2 days. And Paul got to get in the water with the GoPro, and we got to hang our heads over the water and see the tuna. It was pretty spectacular. Some other wildlife we saw. We got to see 2 whales, which was pretty cool. Not as many dolphins, but a ton of flying fish. If you're ever getting hit in the face with a flying fish, you had to weigh the odds. You either rode in pitch black or you rode with the nav lights on. So when you rode in pitch black, you couldn't see the waves, so it was a little scary. Or if you rode with the nav lights on, you got hit all day by flying fish, or all night by flying fish.
And so Billy did take the brunt of that.
Yeah, so we decided to row in the dark and just take what it was giving us.
Something I'd like to point out in the picture is I believe that's Billy, low center, and then the smaller picture of me to the right. So we talked about weight loss. One of the first things you notice is that you would think with all the pushing of your legs, you'd have these monster legs like weightlifters. No, so if you know anything about weightlifting, if you do like 3 sets of 100 pounds, you get bigger. If you do 300 sets of 1 pound, you get smaller. So when each one of us, the annual average per team, we each individually, I think is the stat, 1.5 million strokes. So to get from beginning to end, and when you add a couple of miles like we did, that number goes up. But if you look at Billy's legs as well as mine, that's the first thing to go. So even though you're rowing, you're burning so much energy in your legs back and forth over that 2 hours. You're not building any muscle, you're burning it. So at one point in time, I put my leg up to wipe it off, and my kneecap was the widest part of my leg. My thigh had shrunken. My calf was the first thing to go. But when I looked down and saw that my thigh was skinnier than my knee socket, that's when you start to go, whoa. Yeah. Because none of us really saw ourselves. We only saw each other. So, like, Paul actually, we joke about it, but there was one point in time where I'm like, Paul, you really need to eat more. And he's like, you need to look in a mirror. And, and I'm like, if I had one, I would. But, and honestly, when I get to Antigua, and I'm sure the picture's in here somewhere, I'll bring it up. But, yeah, you just don't realize. We actually took, we had a guessing vote amongst ourselves. We're like, Paul wrote it down. He's like, what do you think you're going to finish at? What's your weight? And I'm like, I don't know. I started at 230, and then before we left on the row, and 2 years of training, I left at 220. It was like 227, 225, somewhere in there. I don't know, maybe whatever it was. But I came in at it's 223, and I came back at 183. So I lost 40 pounds. Billy, I think.
I lost 38.
Yeah. So Paul lost like 43. Yeah. Hupp didn't lose anything because he ate all of our food. So no, he lost 22 pounds, but he did. He was regimented. He laid his food out every day, ate it, and then if there was something we didn't want, he'd be like, "You gonna eat that?" But yeah, you really don't realize. So I guessed, I'm like, I'm gonna come in at 196, and then to come in at 183, I was like, yeah, you really don't have a sense of self out there.
Yeah, I remember that moment too when Cam and I were looking at each other. Next slide. They're funny stories. It's really neat how we can really think back now and laugh. So our arrival in Antigua, to go through this really quick, Billy had really a neat sensory thing that happened. So we had to give a 20-mile call. Actually, we were about 100 miles out, and we were all joking with each other because we felt, we just crossed an ocean almost. So when we were 100 miles out, we were starting to get giddy and lax. But then we had to really just say to each other, remember, we're still 100 miles off the shore. A lot still could go wrong. But at 20 miles, we had to give a call to the safety officer, and they downloaded us with a lot of information. But what was really neat was we didn't see the land yet. But what we did pick up, Billy picked it up first, and Cam also, was that all of a sudden the air changed. It was really a different odor, to the sea, to where we're at. We thought that was really
You could smell the soil. You hadn't smelled earth in 51 days. So they warn you, not warn you, but they tell you that, but you're paying attention to other stuff in the briefings. But one of the things they do mention is that your sensors are going to change, and when you get closer to land, you'll actually be able to smell it before you can see it. And that was absolutely true, because we were like, because you smell fish, you smell the ocean, you can kind of almost smell yourself. And then all of a sudden this whole new scent comes up, and it's like really surprising, and we're all looking at each other like, what is that? And then we're like, dude, that's land.
Yeah. That bottom left is like right when we were seeing land for the first time, like when you could actually start seeing it.
You could see it right over the bow.
That's when you knew I could swim from there.
Yeah.
I said, if I got this now, if I fall off now, I can swim. Someone will pick me up. But yeah, so very close. But the top right is a very surreal feeling, the top two pictures, when you actually start getting into the harbor, into Nelson's dockyard. And it was very, very surreal. A really fabulous feeling of just being done and being able to knowing you're going to step off the boat. Cam, you can get to the lower right.
Yeah, the lower right. That's that was. So we had discussed like what we were going to do, and Hupp, being the Navy chief, he's like, well, there's a tradition in the Navy, and it was going to be where I think Paul steps off the boat. He, as the chief of the boat, was going to announce our arrival, and it was going to be this giant naval ceremony. And I'm like, I was in the Air Force. I think we should do it a different way. And so I threw my 2 cents out there, and I said one of the things that had spoken to me was when I saw other teams embrace and step off as one. And I caught them in a moment of weakness, and they agreed. So,
yeah, I know we're getting close on time, but we can go to the next slide. Let's see what that one pops up. But I don't want to miss key points. And what Cam brought out was really, really a significant point for you all to understand. You know, all through this journey, the four of us traveled with ups and downs. You know, don't ever think that we all just held hands and didn't have any differences. But what was important is through all our differences, through all our disagreements, we always came to an agreement. And we did it in a very collaborative fashion. You know, there was never really anything that was autocratic. You know, if there was anything that was autocratic on the boat, maybe at times there were small, like, navigational things or stuff like that. But everything we did through the mission, and it's hard. It's hard to do it that way. But it's an important message, really, for our veterans and for a community, right? Because you can have differences, but really, in the end, when it comes down to it, you have to come out and have some kind of collaborative solution that you can all kind of work through. And this really was no different. And we didn't want to just say that in presentations. You know, we actually wanted to live and breathe it. But the expectations, too, of the way relationships are is very important to understand, in that you shouldn't expect your relationship to be any different when you come back. Because, like, people now will be like, oh, you know, do you and Billy get along? You know, or you and Cam get along? Or I haven't seen you guys. Or, you know, we're like, well, we're the same way we were when we left. You know, Billy and I, always close, but we never held hands and walked on the beach and listened to Mozart, you know, together. So why would we do that now? You know, but people get these different, you know, expectations. But to know that really we all came through that together, and Cam, you know, brought out a piece. And that's a very moving photo, that no matter what, we're going to hold hands, we're going to be together, and we did something together. And each one of the holding of hands was a representative, too, of our community, whoever we knew in all different parts. So this piece here, this one, again, one for the sea. Cam covered that. That was kind of, those were just staged bottles. We haven't really actually received ours. All four of the guys really got a neat thing because, like we said, we were paid. This was a paid sponsorship. So we all got to really learn what it was like to make a commercial, you know, to do like take 15 of, you know, of something. But if you're on social media, it's really kind of neat, because my kid one day was on social media, and then all of a sudden Cam and I popped up, our voice in a Talisker commercial. So it's neat. And what's neat about it really is it gave us another medium and another venue to really stress the word about the importance of veteran suicide in the United States. Next slide.
I was going to point out something on the right there real quick. So the one on the left is literally minutes after we arrived. So as soon as you get off the boat, you still have, there's a rail behind us that I think we all leaned on at one point in time, and they ask you to get off the rail for the picture. And I'm like, we'll try. But and then they hand you these very valuable whiskey bottles filled. And they're telling you to hold tight and take a picture, and they're telling you to pose the label out so that you can see it, and they're slapping these T-shirts on you that came out of nowhere. And I'm like, I can see my wife right there, like as close as you. And I haven't seen her in 51, and we all have our family, and there was like probably close to 20 or 30 people from the island waiting for us there. They had come to visit. And I'm like, I don't want to take a picture. I want to go say hi. I want to hug my wife. I want to kiss her. I want to say hi to everybody, and most importantly, I want that cheeseburger that's over there waiting for it.
Yeah, I never drink ginger ale. I had 4 ginger ales at that tent with that burger. I don't even know where that came from.
Ice never tasted so good. Yeah. And then the picture on the right is literally, so we landed at like, what was it, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night? And then at 11 o'clock the next morning, we had to load up in a van, go down to a local beach, and start walking and taking pictures and posing in different various areas of the beach. And one of the things that I found completely absurd was your feet get really sensitive on the boat because you don't have a lot of friction. You wear your shoes, you go lay down. You wear no shoes, you go lay down, whatever. But you're not doing a lot of normal things with your feet, so they're uber sensitive. Well, then these geniuses decide to walk us down a basically like a crushed shell beach. And we were the first ones to go, and I said, hey, just a little heads up when the next crew comes in, maybe let them wear their shoes. It's like, because the first thing they said was, leave your shoes over there. And then we walked, and we walked, and we walked, and I'm like, again, I just want food and sleep.
Yeah, we had everything on the menu. We can go to the next slide. The hotel that we were at, they had this little menu, and it had French toast, eggs, pancakes, then it had like eggs Benedict, and I went through every item, and I got to the end, and really, literally, my girlfriend ended up going to the waitress. When I was just sitting there for like 2 hours, and then I went to go order another thing, and the waitress told me, sorry, I can't serve you anymore. And I'm looking at her because we were told that all the hotels serve 24 hours a day because of the rowers, and I was like, but you said you're serving 24 hours a day. And they're like, yeah, but no, your girlfriend said you're done. And you just get a bellyache. But
yeah.
This slide here, the number changed. We're at about $920,000 that we've raised, and we haven't even sold the boat yet on that. We'll go to the next slide. So that's really exciting.
Paul touched on something kind of funny. You can actually get food sickness in a different way because you've been eating dehydrated food for 51 days, that even as much as you quench real food, if you eat too many regular meals, your body will revolt. And I had a scenario where I went out and I'm like, ooh, yeah, dessert. And then I went to lunch and I'm like, dessert. And then I went to dinner and I'm like, ooh, dessert. And then my body said, mm-mm. Yeah. And then I was like, ooh, too many desserts. And your body, So one of the things they tell your families when they come to see you arrive, they have daily announcements for the families, and they tell your family, don't let anybody that's a rower make any decisions of any value.
Seriously?
They're not even joking. My wife had to order breakfast for me the next day because I would look at a menu, and the words were just moving. It was like the whole earth was still like, it actually took me I got back on the island here February 4th, I would say just before St. Patrick's Day. I probably started feeling normal again, where I could stand up in the shower without having to grab a wall for fear of falling over. So. Or sitting at my desk at work without the computer looking like it was about to slide off the desk. So.
Yeah, it was really real. It was kind of neat. Just so you know, on this here, we raised over $920,000, and we were pretty active in the distribution of our money. We didn't want it just to sit, so even when we were out on the ocean, we actually purchased the kennel. When we came back, before we left, we put a down payment on. When we were out in the ocean, all our wives ended up going to Canine for Warriors and doing an additional payment for the kennel, and then we also gave across the line $50,000 to start the endowment. So we really want it to be very, very action based. We're kind of holding right now on the donations that we receive, just to kind of see where the campaign's going, because there's a possibility if we can get to another 200,000, we actually can buy another kennel. But if we don't do that, then we're just going to go ahead and sponsor a remaining of the dogs. And then we'll probably we'll have the opportunity to name each one of the dogs. The dogs will have a significant meaning in the name. We'll reach out to the community for that, and we'll figure that piece out. Next slide, please. If there is one.
A little braggadocious.
I'm getting signals up there. I didn't.
A little bragging fun fact for us is that we didn't break any world records. There was at least three teams that broke world records during this race. Female twosome, fastest ever. A female foursome. Threesome?
Yeah, threesome.
Threesome from England, fastest ever. And then two gentlemen, oldest ever. They were, twosome, oldest ever. And but our proud moment, and I don't generally ever brag about us, but we either are or we are knocking at the door of being the single most ever money raised by a single team. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that got added or dropped on there. We had the before and after picture. That might have been on the other, might have just been an extra
That's the
added
whole
picture. Yeah, that's okay.
Way to go, Paul.
Yeah, I know, right?
Guys, listen, thank you so much. We ran a little bit over, but I don't care because it's just good to sit and listen to your stories. I have one more question, right? So 3 years, however many 1,000 miles across the ocean, 51 days, over 900 days training preparation. I want to hear from all three of you. What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I know.
Yeah, it really is.
Take it or take it, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll take the lead on that. It's really actually a great question. When we were out at the University of Jacksonville, or Jacksonville University, JU, there was a young lady that asked pretty much a similar question. Sometimes you always get the questions, where did you go to the bathroom? How'd you shower? What'd you eat? But the question Pastor Charlie just asked is really key because it goes along with our mission. It was, the journey was really something. And I know the way that I captured it and wrote it out in social media and wrote letters to our followers and our sponsors, and I'll summarize it for you all. For me individually, I go at it two ways. One is the ocean, the actual crossing, the physical and mental crossing for me. It shaped me as an individual to enhance my grit, my ability to do mundane tasks, but to see significant outcome from just even grit kind of work. It created more decisiveness, I think, for me, created more of a resolve to be able to put your mind to something and to complete it even after you're faced with a lot of adversity, that you could still get the same goal and achieve the same outcome. The second part of that I was never really prepared for, kind of knew it was there maybe, but I did not know it was going to be this powerful, is that a community reshaped my heart. In an extremely big way that I was not prepared for.
How did this change me? A lot more patient of a person, that's for sure. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So the whole journey across the ocean took on a whole different challenge for me. And that's, I will be, as of now, the last type 1 diabetic to row in this race because they stopped it right after I registered and they said no more. Because they didn't want to deal with the challenge of it. But for me, it was a challenge, again, knowing that I can do anything as a type 1 diabetic. And I think that hopefully that spreads to other younger children with diabetes. They can show them that they can, what you put your mind to, you can accomplish. I spent a lot of time on the water. Paul doesn't talk a whole lot. On stage he does, but on the water, to be honest with you, Paul was my rowing partner. We rowed together, and it was really hard to pull words out of him sometimes. He would get in his Zen mode and just row, and I would be like looking for things to just pry questions out of him. But I also spent a lot of time talking to the stars and talking to God. So it was, for me, the whole journey was very surreal. It just was like, wow, the world is such a big place. The universe is such a big place, and I can do anything. I feel that. I feel that there's nothing I can't accomplish in this world. And I also had one thing. This little wooden cross right here, and there's a story behind this, and I don't know if anyone had ever heard this story before. In 2010, I was going through a difficult time in my life, and I swear, I'm sitting right here. My door was locked. My car door was locked. I found this cross on my steering wheel, hanging on my steering wheel. It It was on New Year's Day. I was out watching a football game at a bar, and I came back out to my car, and that cross was hanging there. And that is the same piece of string from 2010 has never broken. The cross is never, it's just a little wooden cross. I do not know where it came from, but it was hanging on my steering wheel, and I swear the door was locked. But every time we would do our ocean runs, every time and I wore that cross across the ocean, and the string did not break. And there was so many things on that boat that broke, and that this, salt air ate away, but that cross still stayed true. And that just was kind of a weird testament to me. So anyhow, thought I'd share that.
Thank you. So I'm the twisted one on the group. I told Billy he's been clinging to a memento from a stalker for all these years. But
Jesus is stalking you, Billy.
yes, there you go. So, wow. I grew up in Chicago, as you can tell, my accent. I'm not a true Floridian. And I would easily say I grew up jaded. I grew up broke. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood. And if anybody had ever told me I would be living on an island with palm trees in my front yard, doing what I do and having an opportunity like this presented to me, and then not only have it presented to me, but then actually be able to follow through and do it, I would have said you got the wrong kid. And then to have the community, as Paul and Billy have said, rally around us, it was almost, when I first moved here, it was uncomfortable because, people were so genuine, and you don't get that up where I'm from. And the love and support of everybody, whether they were friends for years that have been here or people that I had never met, you couldn't differentiate the love from one from the other, and that was amazing. And something that I didn't make very public before I left, that was a personal issue that the people that knew me actually rallied around, was I believe Billy actually did a prayer. My dad passed in May. My mom passed in October. So I lost both my parents just before the row. So I did a lot of talking to them, and I did a lot of talking to God every night, every day, and every night. And in some ways, I know it sounds weird to hear myself say this, it was a blessing, because the row actually asks you, who do you want to be notified? What do you want to know? What information do you want coming into the boat? And my biggest fear was being on the ocean and not being able to, because my parents were older and I knew that there was a chance. But my mom had Alzheimer's, and my dad, lucky him, he went out on a golf course right after golfing. So I can't imagine any other way he wanted to go. And one of the things he had always said to me was, throughout this whole journey, man, I really wish I could go with you. Man, I really wish I could go with you. That's huge. He was a Navy man, and he'd never done anything like this in his life. And he had himself cremated. So he went with me. I took him with. And my mom, first generation born here from Ireland, and she had given me a cross 20-some years ago, and I had never worn it. I held it, it hung over my bedpost right over my head, and it stayed there for 20-some years. And then when she passed, just before we were getting ready to leave, I decided to take it off and wear it. And I wore it for the entire row. And every morning when I woke up, every shift when I woke up, I would kiss it. And I would look up and I would talk to her, and I knew she was looking over me. I had my dad right next to me, so I knew he was watching. The day we landed, after we did all that stuff that you saw, I went and sat on the bed. I leaned over, And I sat on the edge of the bed, and the cross fell into my hands. True story. And my wife looked right at me, and she goes, that's because she knows she doesn't have to watch you anymore. Yeah, I had a lot of soul searching and a lot of conversations, and I truly believe none of it would be possible without God. So,
Guys, listen, thank you. It took us a wee while to get this arranged, but I'm glad we got it arranged. You took on a gargantuan task and challenge, and you pulled the whole community with you, and the whole community pulled you through those days by the sound of it, and you're still here giving back to the community. And as a blow-in community leader, as I get to be here, I want to thank you for that. I do want to thank you for that, and thank you for your example and for your stories. What I've learned tonight is that the United Methodist Church could do with an Atlantic rowing challenge, because it could do with like being together and learning how to step out of the boat together, right? So that's a wee bit that I take away, but I'm just inspired by you, all four of you, and your individual stories and your team story, and more than anything, your mission, because mental health matters. Particularly for our veterans and for everyone else who struggles with it. And suicide is a problem throughout the world. And so as someone who tries to deal in hope where hopelessness sometimes reigns, I want to thank you personally for your work and for your witness and for your mission. And guys, I hope that you've had fun tonight listening in, and maybe now you'll take the opportunity to thank Foar From Home.
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your time with us. I mean, this means a lot to me personally. I know it means a lot to us, but you could have been anywhere tonight, and you chose to come listen to us, so thank you.
All right. Pastor Charlie?
Yep.
Just one other thing to the community to give back. The boat will be in the Shrimp Festival Parade. The only reason I'm just saying this real quick is I know many of you asked to see the boat, and Marlon and Beryl, they're always working down there, so they can't just stop and then give tours, for the boat. But if you are interested in seeing the boat, you want your personal tour, we're all about that. Just get a hold of one of us, we'll bring you down there. But your other opportunity is at Shrimp Fest, after the parade, the boat will be staged down by 2nd and Center Street in front of the Palace. So you can come see us down here. And ma'am, what's your name? Miss Linda? Glenda. So Glenda, I'm going to put her on the spot. She said for her 93rd birthday, she actually wants to come on the boat. So we might be giving her a ride. 90 what? 95th. Man, that's even, it's even better. So y'all have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody.